Hello, hello. Welcome back to Through the Decades, the podcast. This series, I'm in Gabriel Court in Saffron Walden, Essex, which is another McCarthy Stone retirement living development. And just like last time, throughout the series, I'll be interviewing some of the homeowners and getting an insight into their entire lives from their childhood through the decades to the present day. And this week, I'm joined by Brenda, who is 80 years young. So Brenda, would you like to kickstart your episode by telling us a bit about yourself, who you are, and a bit about your life?
Right, well, my name is Brenda Sheath. I'm married to David. I was born in North London and lived in North London. I was born in the war, during the war, although of course I don't remember anything about it. I grew up in North London. Life was much simpler then. We didn't have a lot because it was post-war and very austere, but we never felt deprived as children. We could play in the street, we could play in the road because there weren't many cars about. And I went to a nice infant and junior school just up the road and had plenty of friends and went to birthday parties, and quite frankly it was quite a simple life really. Then when I got older I failed my 11 plus, and that was quite a dramatic because my parents really wanted me to go to grammar school. But I retook the exam and I went to what they call a central school, which is probably near Mrs. And I was very fortunate in the headmaster was very keen to help us to get on, and I got 5 O levels. I went on to a technical school and did a pre-nursing course, made new friends there. 18 I started as a student nurse at the Royal Free Hospital in London, and the training was for 3 years. And they had 3 hospitals, one in London, one in Hampstead, one in Islington. And we were sent about. We had to do shift system of work, and we had to do night duty every 3 months, which I found very difficult. By the time I got to the 3rd year, I cracked it. I was all right, I could manage it. I found it very difficult to sleep in the day. And I qualified as a nurse in 1963, and I stayed on another year as a ward staff nurse, and then I got married.
Lovely. What do you remember about the place that you grew up? How was life growing up?
Well, it was trouble-free, really. My father was very strict, and I've got an abiding memory of that. Because in some ways I felt he was unreasonable. But then he enabled me to stay on until I was 18 in education. And in fact, I should always be very grateful to him for that, because otherwise I wouldn't have done the job I did. We always went on holidays, only in this country, but nice holidays all over the place. My father was quite adventurous really with travelling, but only within this country at the time. It was quite a happy time really.
Lovely.
The most disappointing thing was failing my 11 plus, but that didn't, in the end, it didn't interfere with what I wanted to do.
Tell us a little bit about your school life. How was school for you? Did you enjoy school?
Yes, I always enjoyed school.
So what was kind of day-to-day school life like for you?
Well, it was very routine, regulated. You know, you had lessons and you had playtime and you had assembly in the morning when all the school gathered. Of course, the numbers in the schools were much, much lower than they have today. I can't imagine what it must be like to go to a secondary school with all those children.
Hundreds and hundreds.
Yes,
yeah.
there was, and in my central school that I went to, where I got my O levels, there were 200 pupils, and that's really. There was only 2 classrooms in each year, so I can't imagine what it must be like to be in such huge numbers.
Yeah. Moving away kind of then from your childhood, moving into kind of the wider world, what was your first job?
My first job was being a student nurse.
How was that? What was life like as a student nurse?
Busy.
Well, it was a very strict training. There was lots of studying to do. To start with, the first 3 months of the first job I did was in the schoolroom. And then we went on to the wards, and they had a system of, when you were in the first year, you had no belt. We had proper uniforms, striped dresses, starched aprons, white starched caps. So if you had no belt, you were the junior. If you had a striped belt, you were in your second year. If you had a blue belt, you were in the third year. And that's the more senior ones used to have to help you in your training. But the ward sister was in charge, and the staff nurses who were qualified. Each ward had a sister and 2 staff nurses, and they were all qualified, and it was all part of your training. And you had to do night duty in first, second and third year, which was quite hard going. But if you wanted to qualify, you had to do it.
Yeah. So how did your career, were you always in kind of the nurse health?
No.
How did your career working life move?
Well, I went from being qualified to be a staff nurse, and then I got married. And where we lived at the time, there was no big general hospital. We didn't have a car, so I couldn't work. I did start working in one big hospital, but it was shift system, and being newly married was very, very difficult, and I just stopped doing it and got an ordinary job I think a lot of women did that in those days. They just did a job that suited their circumstances.
So what job then did you progress into?
Well, I wouldn't call it progress. I just worked in an office in a department store in Enfield. But I was only there a year because I had my first child. And then I stayed at home. I had another one. And I stayed at home while they were little.
What has been the biggest lesson that you have learned throughout your life, with everything that you've experienced?
Well, I think I would say perseverance. You know, it's no good giving up when things get difficult. You've just got to try to cope with them.
If you could go back to any age or any year in your life, what would that be and why?
Oh, gosh.
I mean, a lot of people have said they'd go back to the day they met their husband or the day that they got their first job or that kind of thing. If you had to choose one year or one age to go back to, what would yours be?
I suppose I would say that when we first met, and well, we knew each other for a long time before we got married because of my nurse's training. But when I met my husband and when we got married, because we started a new life together then, and a family.
This is arguably probably one of the biggest questions that I ask. What was the best day of your life? Was getting married the best day of your life?
It was, yeah.
How was, if you don't mind me asking, how was your wedding day? How was that for you?
It was wonderful. I had a wedding dress made by a local lady that was very inexpensive but looked beautiful. And all our friends and family came. It was a sunny day. It was marvellous. And we went on our honeymoon to Mallorca.
Wow.
Because that was 1964. And that was when, what do you call those holidays? The package holidays first started. And David had met a friend at work, and he and his wife had been on one, and they highly recommended it. I think it cost us was it £45? Something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
It really was.
Completely
the
different.
had propellers. Not the jet.
Completely different to
Yeah.
the prices now.
But we went to
And
Mallorca, and it was the first time either of us have really been abroad. I mean, I'm not counting sort of the British Isles or Ireland or something like that. The first time we've really been abroad, it was so different. The weather was absolutely gorgeous. And also we were very fortunate because the ward sister I worked for used to go on holiday with a friend because her husband was far too active. They were elderly, far too active for her. She couldn't keep going here, there and everywhere and driving for miles. And they were quite wealthy, and she introduced us to them, and he actually motored to Mallorca. He motored all the way down to the foot of Italy and went on a ferry over to... he met us there, and he took us out, and he took us to places we probably wouldn't have gone to if we hadn't met him. I mean, we weren't with him all the time, but it just made it such an exciting holiday. It was something we'd never ever experienced before, and I could never forget it. In fact, next year will be our diamond wedding anniversary.
Wow.
If we get there, and I would very much like to go back to Mallorca to celebrate that because it meant so much.
Yeah. So we mentioned just then about how, like the package holidays, how much the cost has changed since then. What do you miss about life then compared to how life is now, kind of day to day?
Well, I don't know, it sounds a bit nebulous, but what I miss is that the country is in such a state. The politicians are always arguing, they never seem to resolve problems, they don't seem to listen to people. They're all always trying to outdo one another. I don't feel they're working for the people of this country. I think that's just, their own ambitions that count. That's a bit sweeping. I mean, there are obviously some of them who are. They have integrity, but I don't think many people have integrity these days. It's everything they want to get, and they don't care how they get it. So life was uncomplicated then.
Yeah.
Governments changed, problems came along, but they were dealt with, and you felt that somebody was sorting things out, even if they were difficult problems. Today, it's just an awful mess, I think.
Like kind of the simplicity of life
Yeah.
back then. Yeah. What would you say you are most proud of, looking back at your life and the things you've achieved and things you've done? What would you say is something that you are most proud of to look back at?
Well, what we've achieved in our life together. Because when we started, we bought a house and we were very hard up. For years, we not struggled, but it was difficult.
Yeah.
And well, we're secure financially. We're not wealthy, but we're financially secure.
Yeah.
We've got lovely children. They're both very good to us. They don't live far away. So I think it's, when you think how little we had when we first started, but we've just worked and worked together.
Worked your way up.
And, we've gone without when we needed to, and we've...
Yeah. I like that answer because it's such a unique answer, because it's so personal to you. I mean, obviously I've interviewed a load of people in my previous series, and it's been very much kind of, I'm really proud of what I've achieved in my work or whatever. But it's really nice to hear that you've actually looked back and worked your way up, and you're really proud of that, and I can tell how proud you are of that. That's really nice.
Thank you.
When you were younger, what was your big dream? What was the aspiration for you when you grew up? What did you really want to achieve?
I wanted to have a 4-bedroomed house. And when I said that to my husband's parents, they literally gasped.
But we had one.
But we got one. Yes.
So your dream came true.
Yes, yes.
let's move now to the present day. You're here at Gabriel Court. How long have you been living here?
10 years.
10 years. So
Yeah.
that's a couple of years after it was first built, if I'm right
No,
thinking.
it came in new.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what made you move to this development? You could have moved to any development
Well,
nearby. Why
for
did you choose?
25 years, we lived in Wiltshire. We came from here, this part of the world. We lived in Wiltshire because David's job went to it, and we went with it. And we lived in a village, and we had 25 really happy years in a lovely community, and got really involved in things there. But when we got to 70, and David had a mild heart attack in his 60s, we knew the children who they didn't want to come with us. They'd been to university, they wanted to stay where we were before. And they had a flat and they shared it together, a brother and sister. But when we got to 70, we knew that they couldn't keep driving all the way from this part of the world to Wiltshire to sort us out if it was needed. And we felt that although we'd been very happy there, it was time we came back to be nearer our family.
Yeah.
And we knew that as we got older, it would be much more difficult to do all the maintenance and upkeep of a house and a garden. So we came straight into this a retirement apartment.
Did you view or look at any other developments of a similar nature?
Yes, we did.
Why did you choose this one out of them all? What appealed you to this particular
Well, first of all, the location. We love living in Saffron Walden.
Yeah.
And as you can see, if we look out of our windows, we've got no high-rise flats, we've got no busy road running past.
Yeah. It's quiet.
It's quiet, it's peaceful, and also I've always been a passionate gardener, and I mean a passionate gardener, and it means a great deal to me, and we are allowed to garden from the top there right round to the corner where our kitchen is.
Wow.
So that's what we do.
Tell me a little about gardening then. So is that just a big passion of yours? Did you... Why do you like gardening so much?
Well, first of all, when we had our first house, that's my father always had an allotment, and he wasn't a flower person, but he grew a lot of vegetables and soft fruit for us, because when it was post-war, it was very helpful, you see.
Mm.
And his sister was also a great gardener, and I just somehow think it's in the family. And once we got our first house, I got involved in the garden there, and ever since, wherever we've been.
Just loved it.
And I love it.
That's really
It's
nice.
very therapeutic. It's very creative.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't involve lots of people. You know, lots of things people like doing for recreation involve other people. But I just love plants, and I just love growing things. And we can do this for as long as we want to, because McCarthy and Stone were supposed to be encouraging people with their hobbies.
Yeah.
As long as we didn't take all the shrubs out, you know, if we can't do it anymore, we just say, there's a gardener comes here, and we just say to the house manager, we can't do this anymore, can the gardener take over? So there's no pressure.
Yeah.
We can do it for as long as we want to. We both enjoy it. I think I'm a bit more passionate about it than David, but he still plays his part a great deal in doing it.
That's nice. That's really lovely. So how do you find this type of community living? Because obviously this is an independent living development, so you've obviously got your independence at home in the apartment, but then outside there's very much this present social scene, coffee mornings and things like that. How do you find living in this type of community?
Lovely. You can shut your front door and spend as much time in here as you want to, and you can join in whatever you want to. We don't join in a lot. We do go to the coffee mornings because we want to engage with the other people who live here.
Yeah.
But they do exercises. Well, I can walk down to the town and back, so I don't think I need to sit in a chair and do exercises. And very often little groups of them are in the lounge talking in the afternoon because they can't get out.
Yeah.
But we can get out. David drives, we go out to places, we go to see our children, they come to see us, you know.
Yeah.
We've got friends. The nice thing about it was, when we moved away, we used to invite our close friends to come and spend a weekend with us every now and then. So when we came back here, we didn't have to find we did find new friends, but the old friends were we were still in touch with.
Yeah.
And they don't live far, and we go and see them, and so we found it suited us as much as we enjoyed living in a village in Wiltshire.
Yeah.
Life moves on.
Yeah. And
we knew that we needed to be nearer the family and in a place where we didn't have a lot of maintenance to be responsible for.
Yeah. And I suppose that's the good thing is that social scene is always there if you want it.
Yes, exactly.
It's not compulsory.
Oh, yes.
Which is really nice.
Sometimes we have, like when it was the coronation or the platinum, the
Jubilee.
Queen's Jubilee.
Yeah.
You know, we'll have a community thing there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I sort of make sandwiches to help towards it. So
yeah, it's a real nice kind of family spirit almost.
There is, because it's not too big. That's what we like about it.
It's a nice, close, it's lovely. So would you recommend this type of community living and independent living developments as a whole?
Very much so.
It's really nice to hear. So I'm going to end this episode in the way that I've ended every single episode, and I'll ask you, what one piece of advice would you give to the younger generation as a whole, the younger generation listening?
It's very difficult for the younger generation to have difficulties that we never encountered. It might have been hard for us, but it was possible if we made enough sacrifices to buy our own home. But now lots of them go to university, they come out with debt, they find it hard to get work, you know, because of the way things have changed, because everything's automated now. Yeah. And I think don't give up hope, just keep trying.
Yeah.
And also, when things get difficult, just try to weather them, not to give up. It's not easy. It's not easy advice to give, but I think it's what we've done all along. I mean, we have had difficult times. No marriage is rosy for the whole of, especially the number of years we've been married. But you just have to sort of work at things and try to overcome difficulties.
And I suppose if you do manage to go through these difficult times, when you come out the other end, it makes you more appreciative.
Yes, it does, and it makes you stronger too.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. Thank you very much, Brenda. And that is it for this week. Thank you, Brenda, for joining me and sharing your incredible tales with us. And make sure you join me next week with my guest, David, who is coincidentally Brenda's husband. He'll be here sharing his stories through the decades on the podcast. And don't forget to share the podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music or YouTube, and turn on notifications to never miss an episode. You know the drill by now. Apart from that, I'll see you next week.